What if, the biggest problem in the organization is not strategy? People are showing up physically, but emotionally exhausted. Some people are not difficult, but they are just operating from prolonged stress. It can be that some are not resistant, they are just psychologically unsafe. Some employees are not lazy. Just caring about employee well-being, reduce performance. Hello everyone, and welcome again to the Coral 8 podcast. Yes, I need to apologize. We're sorry. We've been away for a bit. Coral 8 has had quite a bit of work she's been doing, so we've not had time to shoot. But hey, I listened and I did get to hear quite a number of comments on the Coral 8 podcast asking, when are we dropping another tidbit? When are we dropping something new? And that's why I'm here today, saying that I listened, I heard, and I'm here. And we're going to try and make this a bit more consistent as much as we possibly can. Because, Coral 8 attends to quite a number of other businesses outside of shooting her podcast. So today, I'm going to be talking about something that has got me worried a bit. And this because over a period of time, with the work we've been doing with some clients, we have noticed certain things that has been happening with, the people that work in these organizations where we have had to do quite a bit of work. And it really got me thinking. And, when it was time to come up with, a new topic, for our shoot today, I was wondering, what will we talk about? Okay. And at very short notice, I decided, why don't I pull up, a summary of things that I had seen, within some of these companies that I've had to work with in Port Harcourt, in Lagos, and one in Ibadan, and just try and pull out some things because it's really, really important that we start to talk about these things. And so today I want to talk about how you cannot build a healthy company with unhealthy people. And it's really critical, okay? And this is out of a function of, quite a bit of things that I have seen, work I've done with companies, and some of the things I've seen even from corporate world, my corporate world, having been in the corporate world for about 3 decades, and knowing that these things are really unhealthy. And so I just said, why don't we talk about this? Because really, it's not something people really put out there or really talk about. And so it's important. And the question is, what if, the biggest problem in the organization is not strategy, it's not funding, and it's not competition? What if that's not what it really is? What if the biggest problem is the emotional condition of the people that actually hold the organization together? Okay, now working with these companies, one of the things that we have done is do a lot of employee surveys. And those employee surveys are usually anonymous, okay? So at the back end, we as Coral 8 receive the back end of the responses that we get. But in the front end, they are responding to, like would naturally use, your Google format and Google form to ask this question. And quite a number of responses that we get. So when we take it, I'm a strategist. So when we take it and we plot the graph, we found out that, there are so many, people that are working in organizations that are really, really not giving their best in these organizations for certain reasons, and this is raw data, this is real data, this is what is actually happening in organizations. So sometimes we talk a lot about productivity, we talk a lot about targets, we talk about the growths, we talk about, how the employees are supposed to meet their KPIs and all. However, very few organizations stop to ask, what is the emotional state of the people that are working within the organizations and producing these results? And these last couple of weeks, about a month now, thereabout, having gone through, while I was trying to think about what I was going to talk about today, I went back to looking at those results and I realized that, you cannot build a healthy company with unhealthy people. There's so many unhealthy employees working around the organizations. I can tell you that for free. One of the portfolios that I managed in my last place of assignment was culture transformation. And part of culture transformation is working with, HR with respect to performance management, with respect to KPIs and all that. And one of the things that we do from the strategy point of view is to always carry out an employee survey at that particular point in time. So before an appraisal session comes up, we have put out, an employee survey because we want to find out what's happening within the system at that particular point in time before these appraisal sessions actually take place. So we do that, and we find out that there's still quite a number of unhealthy people working in some certain departments, some certain subunits, because so much is happening within that. And a culmination of all that put together eventually becomes the totality of the business. And so when these appraisal sessions are done, you would see a lot of issues happening. And sometimes, yes, it could do with the supervisors. It could also do with the communication flow within that organization at that particular point in time. So all the strategies are clock it in check. All the processes, business processes, clock it in check. But what's actually happening within the system in terms of how are you adding that value to the totality of the organization? And that's why we want to talk about you cannot build a healthy company with unhealthy people. So welcome to the Correlate podcast, where we have honest conversations about people, organizations, leadership, well-being, and most importantly, sustainable growth. As a business, you want to scale. As a business, you want to grow. As a business, you want to be sure that the people that work with you, no matter how lean or how large they are, 2 to 2,000, 3 to 3,000, 4 to 4,000, 5 to 5,000. I've worked in organizations basically in my totality in my career where employee numbers were hitting the 5,000, 6,000. There's an organization 4,005, another organization 2,005. So I've always worked in organizations that are large, we are large, employee matters. So, but it's so important, whether it's 2, like I said, 2 or 2,000, 4 or 4,000, you can't build an organization with unhealthy people. So today's conversation is important. It's not just for CEOs. It's not just for entrepreneurs. It's not just for business people. It's not just for HR people, but it's for employees. It's for the founders. It's for the managers. It's for the team leaders. It's for everyone, because many workplaces today are functioning, but the people inside them are breaking. They are breaking. And it's usually not as a function of their fault. It also could be as a function of what has the organization communicated. People are showing up physically, but emotionally exhausted. People are mentally overwhelmed. People are disconnected. They are anxious. They are unheard. Imagine in one of the questions that we asked in one of the surveys, where we said how often does HR communicate certain visions, missions, and the corporate values of the organization? And we were shocked at what we got, because when a particular question was, what does S stand for in your core values? And some of the employees were unable to say what that particular S stood for within their core values. I mean, come on. This is a core value of the organization you work with that you are supposed to have embedded with you, but you are exhausted, you're tired. Okay, silence is not always peace, and it's so important. That's why as strategists we carry out those surveys. Silence is not always peace. Silence could just be the employee calling out for survival. And it is so very important. So let's be honest, a lot of employees are carrying so many burdens. I mean, they are dealing with financial pressure, maybe coming from home. They are dealing with family stresses. They are dealing with anxiety, sometimes grief. I remember myself, I lost a younger sister, and I was at work. I was working, and my sister passed, and I needed to resume back at work after that burial. And when I came back to work, I was reporting then to the, overall, to the executive, to the chief executive officer. And I didn't see somebody who was very, it was a question of, well, it's happened, move on. And I came back to work carrying grief. So employees are carrying so many things: burnout, depression, emotional exhaustion, workplace anxiety, unrealistic expectations, because some of the targets that we set even for some of our team members are seriously unachievable, especially within the market or the sector that your business operates on. And yet every morning we expect these employees to wake up and run and perform like they are machines. How is that even possible? Employees are not machines. Human beings are not machines. So when we're doing this, we demand performance from people, but eventually that emotional condition begins to affect them as workforce, and it reveals disengagement, it reveals absenteeism, it reveals conflict, it reveals mistakes, it reveals poor customer service, it reveals misalignment, it reveals a lot of things. Okay, and many organizations, they treat the symptoms. They don't go ahead to address what the real sickness is underneath. One of the sectors that I worked, for instance, when we did a survey of the clinic, the office clinic, we found out that a lot of people were missing work due to days of absenteeism, due to maybe sickness or something. And it was the clinic would just, naturally just administer drugs and all. But we needed to find out what was causing. We had days of absenteeism from reaching 300 days, 350 days, 60 days, 90 days. If you take out that much number of days from work, then you literally are not working. So the need to address it, a tired employee will meet deadlines, no doubt, but they may no longer care about the organization. They may no longer be interested in that organization. And when people stop caring, it's something that we have come to realize. When people stop caring, organizations start dying slowly from inside. And that's exactly what happened in a particular department in one of the businesses that we worked with. We realized that in this particular business, only one person was naturally now doing the work. Okay, that person was doing the work. And we found out that at the beginning of that department, there were 7 people in that department. And then suddenly there was just only 2 people. There were just only 2 people. And these 2 people, they naturally just stopped caring. Yeah, they would send the report, they would deliver on the deadlines, but they didn't matter. So when we had interview sessions with them, you could see that they really didn't care. They were like, well, we are submitting the results, we are submitting the reports, we are meeting the deadlines. But if you ask them anything that had to do with the emotions of the organization itself, they didn't care. They were not interested. And so it's very important. One biggest mistake that organizations make is separating people's problems from the business problems. You can't separate people are the business. So you can't separate people's problems from the business problems. They are very connected. They are so deeply connected. The people and the business, because an unhealthy work culture, I told you one of my portfolios was culture transformation. An unhealthy work culture will affect productivity, will affect profitability, will affect innovation, will affect teamwork, will affect reputation, will affect your brand. That's exactly what it would do. And of course, at the end of the day, long-term sustainability. So it's so important that, because organizations are built by people. I mean, we've had Jack Welch, we've had so many big people, so many very key people talk about these things. Let me say again, organizations are built by people. And when people are emotionally unsafe, and in counseling, we call that psychological safety. When they are emotionally unsafe, the business itself becomes very, very unstable, right? You cannot expect creativity from people constantly operating in fear. You cannot expect productivity from people who are unable to collaborate within the environment. You cannot expect productivity from people who constantly work in silos. You cannot expect productivity or excellence from people who are emotionally drained every single day. Okay, and that's why emotional well-being. And I in the last couple of weeks, I have actually been training on emotional intelligence and all that. It's no longer a soft issue. It's a strategic one, as the case may be. Okay, some workplaces on the outside, when you walk into those environments, they look very, very successful externally, but internally they are emotionally bleeding. Okay, you have people are surviving the workplace instead of growing into it, and that's very dangerous. So people are coming to work because they don't have a choice, especially, in the current situation that we're in, the way the situation is in the country right now. People want to hold on to whatever that they have because, you really don't know where the next bread and butter, quote and unquote, will be coming from. So people are holding on to it, but that's a survival mode. That's a survival thing. We need to talk about organizations that really acknowledge workplace trauma. Yes, there is workplace trauma. I'm a certified counselor, so I can tell you for free that there is workplace trauma, and not all traumas come from, HSC experiences, that's health, and safety experiences. Some experiences come from workplace trauma. They come from toxic leadership. They come from harassment. They come from impossible workloads. Sometimes we just load, instead of just putting the right people in the right place, we load our people with work. So much work, okay? Someone like me, for instance, if I was to give my team members work to do, I would naturally have split that work to ensure that all of us are doing that work together, so that when everything comes together, we have, put everything together and we formed it from the constant, raving, from the reject, from the job insecurity. All these things are happening. And when these experiences happen, and when they become repeatedly, they become a repeat thing, a recurring thing, they shape how, as employees, they begin to think, they begin to feel, and they begin to function and react. Okay. And that's why, it's important to understand that some employees are not lazy. It's not that they are lazy. And that's why one of the things that we do as our business is to work with HR. Because when we are working with HR, we are able to detect whether an employee is actually being, how would I put it, being appraised properly, or whether that employee is, reacting from just emotional exhaustion. Because the general thing is, when you see a certain parameter within the KPI, there's a tendency for you to think that the employee is lazy. And it might just not be that the employee is lazy. It might just be that the employee is emotionally exhausted. It might be that some people are not difficult, but they are just operating from prolonged stress. It can be that some are not resistant. They are just psychologically unsafe. I have worked with quite a number of psychologically unsafe, people. What that means is I've had encounters with them, and then in the course of maybe one interview or two or three, they open up and they say what the things are. Okay. And so it's so important, because a lot of employees, or rather organizations, they reward the output. They don't reward the input. They don't know what the staffs or employees are going through, and as such, that's more like an emotional debt, because you're paying them their salaries at the end of the month. So as far as you're concerned, you feel they should earn the work that they are doing. Yeah, I agree, but eventually that emotional debt is paid, and it's paid in different ways. And this brings me to ask this question, and this question is, to organizations and as well to employees, does caring about employee well-being reduce performance? Does it actually reduce performance? The answer is no. The fact is, healthy people will produce healthier results. There's no doubt. Organizations fear that empathy will weaken standards, and no, that's not true. It doesn't mean that when you're empathetic, that means that the performance of an individual would naturally drop or would not work. No, that's not what it is. But empathy and accountability are not enemies. They are not enemies. If you care about people, you get the result. One of the companies I worked with, specifically the one in Ibadan, they just kept going on and on and going on and on about, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not. And I'm saying, if you do not pay attention, the tendency is that you're going to be having very high turnover of people. And what that means is that you're going to be spending more. So there will be no cost optimization, because you're going to have to be training the new people as they come on board every time. And when you're doing that, you're spending more. So why don't you just pay attention and listen? Take, the surveys that have been done and pay attention to it. It's very critical. If you naturally do employee surveys in your organization, please don't jettison the results that come out of it. Always ensure that you're paying attention to the results that come out of it and the responses that you get. You may not necessarily see the names of the employees who has said what, but it is important that, you pay attention, because healthy workplaces understand balance, and they create environments where people are heard, feedback is respectful, Leaders are emotionally intelligent. The systems, the systems are well supported. The systems know that these things exist. Mental well-being is acknowledged. Performance expectations are clear, and that's why we always talk about the EAP, the employee assisted programs, and organizational well-being, because it matters. Sometimes these employees need counseling, sometimes they just need coaching, sometimes they just need a mental health resource, sometimes they just need a 360 degrees reset, you understand, and stress management. So it's so important that we do this. And as I bring this to a close, it's so important that if you could just imagine, shut your eyes for a few minutes and just imagine, an organization where the leaders listen, where employees feel psychologically safe, where growth matters, well-being matters, communication is healthy, and the people are developed and they are not destroyed. That kind of environment will not just improve the morale of the entirety of the business, but it will improve innovation. There will be trust, there will be loyalty, there will be commitment, and of course there will be long-term, business. So I'm just going to say, that it is so important that that you cannot keep building organizations that are, the organization and thinking that it's healthy when you're carrying with you very unhealthy people. So my real question today is, how do you get more from your employees? How do you ensure that you help your people become healthier human beings while building healthy, organizations together? And I'm leaving you with this: create, an environment where people lead better, collaborate better, create better, and live better. Okay. And so if this conversation resonated with you, my correlate audience, if this resonated with you, share it with someone, leave a comment, leave your thoughts, in the comment section, and subscribe for more of such conversations. We are Correlate, where people's well-being, where leadership, where organizational transformation is so important. And if you want to hear more of this, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share this, make sure you leave a comment, make sure you tell us your thoughts. Maybe I haven't said everything, maybe there's still more to say. Add your comments, add something, let us know. But we at Correlate, we are a catalyst that is determined to make things better for organizations and for the people. Thank you so much. I remain Enobong Ezekiel, founder, CEO, Correlate Limited. Thank you, and see you next time.